Hello there. Welcome to the Slice of Time Street Photography podcast, where I speak with other street photographers to learn more about their vision, ideas, routines, editing, and photography. In today's episode, I'm joined by Victor Shohet from London. He's been photographing since the 1980s, traveling the world with his camera. He does not shy away from interacting with the subjects on the streets. Hi, Victor. Welcome to the show. Maybe it's interesting to introduce yourself a bit, tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Thank you first for hosting me. It's a great privilege. What shall I say about myself? So I've been into photography for circa 40 years. Started before I started traveling the world. I ended up traveling for about 6 years, and that was one of the main drivers of my traveling, is taking photographs in various different places. Had a short break in photography. I actually had my camera stolen. I had no camera gear for a while, and I couldn't really afford a new camera once I could. So that was not an issue. Picked it up all over again. So I had a pause of about 5-6 years in photography. My main photography is focused either on travel or street photography. Occasionally I will do some landscape. Yeah, I haven't done that for a while. But this is really who I am, what I do photography-wise. I don't know if you have any other question about...
Oh, not necessarily, but already I think it's cool. It's like what drew you into photography, because it was the traveling came first, right?
No, it actually started before that. Yeah, I had no idea what I'll be doing when I was traveling. So it started before that. I actually got a camera, Kodak Instamatic, when I was a kid. Yeah, and that drew me to photography. But at a later stage, when I got my SLR, so actually my brother gave me an old Zenith, which is a Russian camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could take photographs, but you could also bang nails on the walls with it. So it doubled as a hammer. Yeah. And then I decided I needed to buy a proper camera because it was so heavy. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And there I decided, okay, if I'm going to buy a camera, I need to know what I want. Yeah, what sort of camera, what sort of capabilities, etc. So I dove deep into the world of photography. At the time, it was books and trials and errors. I used to put bottles in places and take photographs with different parameters, write them all down so I can see the differences. Eventually, I ended up buying myself a Nikon, and then I went over traveling a bit in Europe, only with the intention to see a bit of Europe in a few months, and that's it. But I fell in love with traveling. So I first did the photography. I fell in love with traveling. I ended up backpacking around the world for about 6 years, non-stop. Again, not something I planned to do, but it ended up being backpacking for 6 years, taking photographs in various different places. And also I was lucky enough to be able to sell my photographs to magazines.
Okay.
And I got paid quite well for that. I don't think that world exists anymore with 2 billion photographs taken a day. But at the time, it was probably a bit easier.
Yeah, it's. I know there's still like a market for travel photography, but I also know that it's become really competitive, and it's mostly like aimed at stock photography almost. Like you either need your partners that you know about and have a relationship with, who you know will buy your photos. But yeah, I think it's the market for photography definitely has changed. In some ways for the better, in some ways for the worse. I think it's like any market probably, but it's cool that you could finance your travels that way.
I'll give you an example. Financing my travel, just to be clear, I was traveling on just about nothing. So I remember traveling India. In India in total, I've been for almost a year in 2 different periods. First period I went there, I didn't really have much money, so a friend lent me some money. I lived on $1 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, which is much more today than it was then. But I honestly did not see anyone apart. I'd stay in dorms with locals and eat their food. So it was a great experience, but I definitely wanted to go out and travel with a bit more money. So the second time I went there was $5 a day. So it's like discovering a third dimension.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much, specifically when you're young. How did I finance myself? So I sold photographs to magazines. Yeah, that was for me a hell of a lot of money. And occasionally I do all sorts of jobs I could get done. So I was teaching English in Taiwan. Yeah, so basically I was just speaking into a mic in school and telling stories in English, and that's all I did, and I got paid for that. I was selling some posters on the streets and anything to make a bit of money. Also, flew over to New York, got myself a few more things for my camera, bought another camera, flew over to India. That was the second time. And India was a closed country, so I could sell the gear I bought in New York for quite a big profit.
Oh, okay, I like that. Yeah, cool.
You find ways of financing yourself.
Yeah.
And for that time and the period that you're there, it's just living with hardly anything, but enjoying every minute.
Yeah, that's cool. And was it like, because it's, of course, the podcast is street photography related, but I think like travel and street is quite an overlap. But like, did you, how do I have to say this? Like, strategize your photos. Like, for example, in India, did you go out to specific spots, or did like specific photography because you know like it would sell, or was it more like you make the photos you'd like, and then this photo might sell, and then you like.
Okay, so I was never commissioned.
Mm-hmm.
I was offered. I said no. I never took photographs to be sold. I took photographs for myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if they like it, great. If they don't, they don't. It's I take photographs for myself. Now, I never really had a spot or a strategy or anything. And also, you have to remember, we're talking at the world of film. So you're much stingier. And
exactly.
And you're talking in a world where buying film in many of those countries was virtually impossible. And if you bought it, the likelihood that it was off because it was lying in the sun for the last 12 months. So I had to carry film with me, take care of it, and know that I'm rationing my film until I get to somewhere like Hong Kong or Singapore where I can buy a bit of a new batch of film. So it wasn't, I'm going to go out, I'm going to shoot. I was with my camera all the time. If there was something interesting around me, bang, I'd take a few photos and I'd carry on.
Yeah, and now you shoot digital or?
Digital.
Would you go back to analog? No.
Been there, done it, got the t-shirt. I've spent so much time in dark rooms, etc. I love the world of digital. I love the world of analog. There was a time for that. Now is the time of digital.
That's a very clear answer. Yeah, I'm asking because a lot of people like to go back to analog, and also, as you mentioned, like people now like those expired film rolls that have been in the sun for 12 months, and like it's funny how that used to be an annoyance to you, and now it's like something people crave almost. So that's a funny evolution, I think. But yeah, so now you do it mainly. You do it. Wow. I'm falling over my words. Now you do your photography mainly in London, or do you still travel? Because I mostly see your London work on your Instagram, for example. So I do travel. So if you look through there, for instance, you'll see photographs from Spain, Tarragona, the Santa Tecla festivities. I've also been, I think at the beginning of the year in February, to Italy, to what is called the it's the Orange Festivals where they just go out throwing oranges at each other. Oh, okay,
yeah. And so I do travel, and I do like to go to places where things are happening. And obviously, London is great for that. London is where I live, so almost by definition, most of my photography is here in London. Been to India just a year and a half ago as part of a very interesting project. As taking street photography there, maybe a few words about that as well. So it was about close to 50 photographers from around the world. Yeah, we all went over. The whole idea was documenting Calcutta over one day, from midnight to midnight.
Wow, so 24 hours. And did you actually do it, or did you sleep in between?
Oh, no. So between us, the whole idea was we cover Calcutta in 24 hours.
Ah, okay.
Okay, now the way it was arranged, the people who arranged it was, okay, everybody takes a shift. On that shift, they have to be there.
Yeah, okay.
So we know that the 24 hours are covered. And above that, you can do whatever you want. And all the photos are submissible. So that was, and all that was put together. There was a book that came out of it with the different photographers. Very interesting, different perspective of one city. Very, very interesting. And from there, obviously, I carried on, not just in Calcutta, other parts of India.
And what's the name of the book? Or
if you can see, I think it's quite dormant now, but if you go over, I think it is called Dotso, DOTSO, I think. Let me just double check. So you'll see many photographs from Calcutta. I think you'll probably see it from different places.
Like on Instagram, or?
It's on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Dotso pics.
You did like, how long was a shift?
Each shift was 6 hours. I did probably slept in total for about 4 hours. I took the toughest shift, midnight to 6 a.m.
That is a tough shift, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I took it is, I said, if I'm not going to take it, I'll sleep. Yeah, so I'll miss that opportunity. All the other times, I'm fine. I'll wake up. I'll sleep very little and go and take photographs myself, etc. So actually, one of my favorite pictures was taken at about 3 a.m. in the morning. I think the one, I think you can also see it in the Dotso one at the beginning. Yeah, on the first three, the one on the right.
With with the taxis. Yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah.
And it's people sleeping, I assume.
Yeah, but what caught my eye was the hand sticking out from one taxi and a leg sticking out from the other taxi.
Because I find street photography at night do you do it often, or was it kind of like to challenge yourself that you do it, that you took on a challenge?
I have no preferences for the time. So I do like going over to places where there's lots of gatherings. So it can be events like Pride, Notting Hill Carnival, the Ivrea Carnival, you name it. Yeah, and in a lot of those places, the things that are happening carry on into late at night. So I'll go over to Soho and I'll take photos at night. The way I take my street photography at night is a combination. I will use flash a lot.
Okay.
So flash is something I use it during the day. Also, depending on the light. So I'll use fill-in flash. At night, I'll use flash and slow sync flash. So you can see that also in some of my photos. Gives the sense of movement, etc., and also captures the background quite nice. So I like using the slow sync flash, specifically when things are happening and moving around me. It gives a very interesting effect.
Yeah.
Also, there's a surprise element to it, because you're not really fully in control. The minute you're taking some movement, how much movement will there be there? Where exactly is the light? So you get a general idea of what you're going to get, but you don't really know exactly what you're going to get when you're taking those type of photos. I like them a lot, and many times, you can see I also get very close to my subjects when I do that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because you, like, there are several photos where you're right in their face. Like, of course, there are some where you mentioned the person. Like, there's one you speak of Dash, a Finnish photographer. Like, I assume you know him because you mentioned it in the caption, I think. But there's like, sorry,
which one are we talking about?
It's the one you have, like, one posted from a couple more from the Soho Walkabout and the one from Pride. All three are of Dash, the Finnish photographer, and striking character. And it's like, I assume you know him.
Okay,
like from 3 weeks ago.
Okay, no, I don't. What I do is, and that's like a win-win situation. Yeah, when I approach the people I want to take photographs of, So I'll come in, and I'll come in quite close, depending on the on what is happening. Sometimes people see me and want their photograph taken. They see me with a camera and they're like, I want my photograph taken. And they indicate to you, or they will stop the minute they see you with a camera. Now, I don't really like, I do take posed photographs, yeah, but I'm not a big fan of them. It has to be interesting, but I will do that. But I do take photographs where the people are aware of me taking the photograph. Sometimes it's the second photo that is interesting, not the first one. They just stopped and posed. Now, I do have a chat with them. So many times they come over to me and say, oh, what are you doing? How are you doing? And I tell them, this is what I do. Or I will take the photo and I'll go to, if I like it, I'll go over to the person. I think I've got a very good photograph of you. Yeah. And if you want, I will send it to you. So they give me their details. And that's how I can also tag them.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So it's like you never really know these people. It's like you've never met them before, or like you've seen them. It's always new people, and you just approach them and you go for it. Or
I wouldn't say it's always new people, because
of course,
you get similar characters in similar places, and at a certain point, I get to know those people.
Yeah, of course.
And they recognize me. Are they close acquaintances? No, but there are people that I know and I see a number of times. And other cases, most of the cases, I've never seen them, never had a chat with them. Happy to share the photographs with them. I think it's only fair,
of course,
that I do that if they like the photos. And the only thing I ask them is to tag me if they decide to post the photo.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, at certain cases, I will go and I will shock people. I use, just so you have an idea, my widest lens is 14 millimeters. So with a 14 millimeters, it's literally in your face.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like do you know Bruce Gilden?
No.
It's like a street photographer, and he's a bit controversial because he really pushes his camera in people's faces. It's like really up close, also with flash, and it's like this shocked look of people. But it's like, it's kind of controversial if that's okay to do or not. But it's interesting. In this case, if I look at your photos, that's why I assumed you knew the people, because they never really looked shocked. It's like always like in
because I don't want it to be that way.
Yeah.
So even when I go, there will be certain times, there'll be something quick, and I just raise the camera in people's faces and bang. Yeah. And then I'd look at the photo. If the photo is very interesting, great. But even when I go very, very close to the person, I don't shock them. I've got my camera in my hand and I'll walk close to them. So they know something is about to happen. The flash surprises them many times, but they do see the flash because I've got my flash on the camera. I don't hold it in my hand.
Yeah, it's really like, okay.
It's on my, it's this tiny little flash. I put it on the camera. It's very easy for me. Yeah, and
I was gonna ask, because for my event photography, I use like the Godox V1s, but those are big, and it's like if you go out in the street, it's too heavy.
No, it's the smallest Nikon flash I could find.
Okay,
that fits onto it. I won't be able to do any wedding photography with it.
No, but I mean,
the distance is, but for what I do, it works really well, and it weighs, I don't know, 100 grams.
Yeah, okay.
100 grams.
So it's like before you talk to the people, you already have their photo, I assume?
Yes.
Do you keep looking through the viewfinder, or do you like look past the camera to connect, or?
No, most of my photographs are taken through the viewfinder.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use the screen, depending on the light. So if I'm doing that on a very strong light, etc., so sometimes you look through the screen, you don't see anything.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And do I know that? Like, I take most of the time I'll take the photograph and speak to them afterwards. Not always. Actually, most of the time, not. But if I really like the photo and I want to focus on that person, a few more photographs, etc., so I will communicate with them. Sometimes people get angry at the way I take the photo, And I do get down and they calm down. And I showed them the photo and I said, nothing like, if you don't want me, I'll just go away. But I think this is really interesting and very, very different. Again, it's an acquired technique or something. You get to know when not to shoot someone.
Of course, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, you do get to know, and you get to know when you can, and when people really want you. By the way, people sometimes I wouldn't even notice them. They would stop me, tap on the back. So like, you photograph of us. Yeah. And then they give me this stupid pose. So in that case, I told them, no, you got to do something for me. I can't just put you like it's a selfie. You can do that yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, that's cool that you still make that distinction then. Because I wonder, because it's usually like your modern day, because there's a bit of a difference between your analog black and white photography and your modern day London photography, mostly in subject, I think, because like if I look at your photos now, it's mainly, you mentioned Pride, you mentioned Carnival, I think. There's like all these different people who are in fragile positions, so to speak. Like there's one photo of a guy who is like standing completely naked on like world nude bicycle ride. So I assumed he wasn't the only one, but he's like the only one in the photo being naked in between the crowd.
That is exactly what I wanted. It's exactly what I wanted.
With all the clothed people around, yeah.
The world nude bike ride, it's not something that there's a problem taking photographs. Yeah, there's hundreds of people taking their clothes off.
Yeah.
And all of those people that you see in the photo that still have their clothes on, half an hour later they had their clothes off. I arrived early enough, and the guy who got there he actually is one of the people who arranges it, because I spoke to him afterwards, and I just saw him standing there, and I said, if I can get a second when there's no one, there is someone on the left side of their
but we'll discard it. Yeah.
And the idea in my head was this dystopian feeling. It's like a nightmare where you wake up, everything's happening around you, and you stand out, and no one really cares about you. You're a different person. Yeah. So that's what I wanted in my photograph. It almost is like a person's nightmare.
How long did you have to wait for it?
5 minutes.
Okay, because he's really standing still and kind of looking at the camera.
I think he is looking at me. I don't even remember now.
At least in your direction, yeah. But just in general, like, because there's a lot of Pride photos, LGBTQ. I can assume it's like, while it's on a Pride, it's maybe easier to photograph the people, but I can also assume that people might be kind of, I'm not gonna say scared, but careful with being photographed. No. Actually, if you go over to Pride, it's an exhibitionist event. Most people, most of them, not all of them, most of them would love to have their photograph taken. Okay, cool. And is that what attracts you to those events? Or is it more like what makes you go to, for example, a Pride or to a Carnival? Because you mainly work on those events, right? You don't really do like day-to-day street photography. I do, but I find those characters. You still find those. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you go over to Soho and things, so if you look at the photograph, there's a black and white photograph there. So that I took in Soho. Yeah. And you approach him, he's quite an interesting character now that I've got his contacts, etc. And this is not an event, it's just me walking in Soho and taking photographs. I think diagonally to that is the same thing. Now, if you look at the row above on your right, that again, it's just street photography at night in Soho. Okay, yeah. So it's just walking around with my camera, slow sync mainly, and just shooting. Yeah, and then you can see also, just go one row below and on your right. So that's during the Euros.
So that series I took during
with the guy shouting,
during the finals against Spain. I didn't see the match, as you can imagine. I was just looking at the people, and occasionally I'd look around at the screen to see if something's about to happen, because that's when people react. And is reactions. One of the things I said, I do like taking images very, very close. I go close, but I also love crowd photography. Crowd photography is phenomenal. You will see less of my crowd work on Instagram because it doesn't translate into Instagram. People need a subject, and I love crowd photography. When something is happening, then it has to be large. And when you look at it, you can spend an hour looking at different faces. You get 30, 40, sometimes 100 faces. So and you just focus on them. So if you look at the photos I took from the football, because it's not on a football pitch, it's in front of a TV, so I could get something that's close enough, but still the faces that I want to see. So if you look diagonally from that, there's a black and white series, also from the football.
With the guy.
Yes, and if you look closely, you can see people's facial reactions are everything. They're priceless. You're not going to get it in a normal situation.
No, that's true.
A big crowd of people, everyone reacting to what's happening in a different way.
That's true.
So crowd photography is also very interesting. I went over, you will see photographs from Salamanca. I wasn't that lucky during Easter, taking photographs of the processions, but the weather was so bad they cancelled almost all the processions, and whatever was there was very, very short. But I did manage to take the photos. And again, you can take photos, you can come very, very close to them. You need to be very cognizant, because there's a lot of emotions, as you can imagine. It's a very, very sacred day in the Christian calendar. But the emotions are very, very interesting as a photographer. So sometimes I couldn't really get close. Sometimes I got really, really close to the people, and I could take photos, and you can see the tears in the eyes.
I'm curious, what brings you to getting so close to people? Because, for example, like other photographers choose to, for example, the episode that's already online with Tilo Jene, he really steps back from the people, and they're just like a figure in their scene. And for you, for example, it's really like very up close. So there's like that's a big contrast, of course. So what?
The way his photographs are very atmospheric. They're very atmospheric. You look at it, and it's all about the light and the composition. So I will say this: when I approach a photograph, I've got a set of rules I try and adhere to. But number one for me, before anything, is the story. I see myself as a storyteller. I want people to look at a photograph I've taken and see and try and imagine what is in front of them. So that's number one, the story. Number two is the composition, because sometimes things happen so quickly. If you're going to start composing, the picture's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just have to click. You have to instinctively click. Yeah.
Instinctively click. You obviously, when you do it for so long, you can compose. Like when you raise the camera, you've already got the composition. But I wouldn't like. And the third one is the light. The light is an uncontrollable for me. Yeah, it's great if I get great light. I am really happy with that. But I'm not gonna not snap if there's an interesting story happening in front of me and the light is not correct. And sometimes I will, when I edit my photos, I'll switch it to black and white, because the light is so horrible. It's virtually impossible to get the balance right of the light. And by the way, that's also one of the reasons why I use flash. Can be fill in flash during the day, so it sort of like helps me with the light, and I don't have to think about it too much. And during the night, the slow sync gives me a good lighting on the subject, while also gives me good background.
True, yeah. And also, I just noticed there's like some photos, it's by coincidence that I'm on them, but there's 3 photos here with sweaty people. So it's one of the singer on the floor, and he's like sweaty, and then above it, I think it's from Pride. You have like this guy posing, and there's like a sweat on his abs, I think, and people dancing. And with the flash, the sweat also starts shining and makes it even more clear.
Absolutely.
So that adds as well, I think.
Yes, it adds a lot. It adds. If I take the picture of the singer,
yeah,
I think now you when we had a short chat before we started the recording, you're wondering how do I approach it? How do I get to that? So I don't approach it. Yeah, I went over there. I saw them singing. I took a few photographs. Went on, came back, and I saw that they had a crowd around them. It was on the street. And they were getting the crowd was getting very much into it. So I got close to them. And as the crowd was getting into it, they were obviously reciprocating.
Yeah.
And so I got close, and obviously they're standing and taking photographs. And then he started going down and down and down. So I started going down and down, and I was very close to him, down and down and down with him, all the way down. Yeah. Where he got up to the floor. Now, if you can imagine the situation where there's a lot of people around us, there's no light. If I did not use flash, the picture would have been completely disastrous. There wouldn't have been light, and then I would have had to try and fix it in the post-processing. Here it was bang. And I'm very happy because if you look at it, I love the composition. One thing is the guitarist in the background, not to chop him when you're that close. He's there, and I want him to be there, and I wanted people to get a sense of what's happening also in the background, etc. So that's how I got to that photo. I wasn't thinking of sweat or anything of that.
No, of course, but it's
I was thinking I need light.
Yeah,
I need light for that photograph to work.
So how close were you to him? Or like him through the lens, of course.
If you look at the hand, if you look closely at the hand, you can see how long the hand is, the fingers. That means I'm very, very close. It's 24 millimeters. I wasn't using
that's very close then,
I wasn't using my 14 on this one. And so I'm very, very close to him. It's not like literally if I put my hand forward, I'm as close as you could possibly get to the person.
And so you mentioned you were using your 24 and at your 14 millimeter. Do you use fixed lenses only, or?
No.
Okay.
No, so my 14 is a 14 to 30.
Okay.
I've got a 24 to 110.
Okay, it's right.
And I also have a 70 to 300.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, a lot of people will tell me, what street photographers take photographs with 35 millimeters and that's it. And all the classic street photographers would do that. And I tend to agree. Most of the time, the lens on my camera is the 14 to 30.
Okay.
Most of the time.
I'm a 50 millimeter guy. I don't like 35.
So that's most of that, but that's also because I like the distortion I get from the photo.
Okay.
If I carry only one lens, so sometimes I put everything in it. I've got a tiny bag. I put it, so I will use my 24 to 110. That gives me the full spectrum, and I don't really need to worry about anything. But generally, people tell me, why are you using all those? And specifically, people are shocked when I say that I take street photography with a 300 millimeter lens.
Yeah, it's kind of,
And so my point to everyone is, there's no rules. Forget the rules, junk the rules. It's no different than using a paintbrush when you're making a painting. It's just what you want to get, the effect that you want to get. It gives you a different effect. It gives you a bouquet that you don't get otherwise. It allows you to pick a face out of a crowd. I love doing that. I really love doing that. So many times, if I go into the crowd and take the photo of the person, I will get a great context, and that is what I generally do, and I'll try and get everything sharp. But if I step back and I take a telephoto lens, I can pick that face very, very sharp. So the focus of but I won't just do it as a portrait. So I'll try and get a bit more context, but I want that specific person to be very, very sharp. I like taking profiles in that way, etc. So that gives me a very interesting perspective of things.
But like for me, it's like for most of your photos, I wouldn't have assumed you used a 300 millimeter. Even 70 or up would be crazy. But I see some, of course, that I can understand it. But at the same time, it's like it's a heavy lens and it's like a big lens.
Nope. That's one thing. One of my compromises. Sorry, I'll share. Because I travel so much, it was clear. Like when I was backpacking, etc. My backpack was 50% camera gear.
Yeah,
I used to carry a tripod up in the mountains.
That's crazy.
But I knew one thing: I can't carry heavy lenses. That means I have to compromise in the speed of the lens. There's not much I can do about it. I have to compromise, and I still do the same thing. I do not want to carry things that are going to kill me. So my Nikon, I work with a Nikon. So Nikon have 14 to 28, I think, 14 to 28 or 24 with a 2.8 fixed aperture. I looked at that lens and said, no, too heavy. I have the 14 to 30 with a f4. It's a great lens. I am still shocked by how good it is. And it's not heavy.
No, those I can imagine, but like 300 millimeter is.
So the 300, that's the only lens that's not a Nikon. I use a Takina lens. It's a 70 to 300. It is so light. It is unbelievable.
Okay, cool.
It is unbelievable. Is it the greatest lens in the world? No, it is not. And it's a very slow lens as well. But it's exceptionally light. It's probably my lightest lens.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's cool. I assumed it would be a heavy one, but it's. But is it big then as well? Because often you might stand out, but at the same time, that's not really an issue for you, of course, because you like the interaction. So. Okay,
so I'll tell you something interesting again about how people react. If you walk around, and I know there's a lot of people who take photos with iPhones and do great jobs, and I do occasionally take a photo with my iPhone if I see something very interesting, etc. But how do people react to? There's something very interesting. If he came over with small Ricoh, people look at that. Is he just a voyeur or is he a photographer?
Yeah.
But if you come up with a massive camera, so like, well, that guy is serious. Yeah, I'm going to be in a magazine. I'm going to be in an exhibition, so I better let him do whatever he wants. So, sometimes, strangely enough, the most visible gear you've got allows you to do things, and people take it for granted. That's okay.
It's true. It works in two directions, actually, because it's going to be up online soon. But I had a talk with Stefano Broli, it was, I think. He's a photographer from London as well, a street photographer. And we were having this discussion because he was like taking a photo from how do you call it? Shop window. Sorry. And he immediately, like, a security guard came out, scolded him. And we were discussing, like, if you did that with an iPhone, no one would care because you would just be a tourist and you can take any photo. But at the same time, like yesterday, I was out specifically doing street photography with my smartphone, actually. So I didn't bring any camera. I only brought my smartphone, which I always have. But I was specifically doing it only with. But I was already also thinking, like, some shots with people, I would, as you said, I would be taken more seriously if I was doing it with my camera instead of my smartphone. So it's like it works in two directions, I think.
Exactly.
What camera you use and how people would interact with it. So I think, yeah.
Absolutely. But the key thing, what I'm trying to say is for me, the lenses are just a tool, and I'm just trying to think of one, maybe give you an example. There's this guy with the drum.
Yeah.
So that's taken with a 70-300 lens.
That I can imagine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And again, it wasn't a problem for me to get in. Yeah. I also believe that if you go 1, 2, 3, 4 rows down, and you look at the picture of the left with the fingernails,
yeah,
I think that's also taken with a 300.
It gives a different result. Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
it's just the use. It's not the camera, the lens I use a lot, but so many times it will give me something that I want. Now, if you look at the picture next to the guy with the drums, that woman holding her child.
That's very up close. Yeah,
that's a 14mm.
Yeah,
lens. That's a 14, which I use a hell of a lot. So out of the 14 to 30, I use it either at 14 or at 30. Yeah, if I want to make the person look okay and not a caricature,
yeah,
I would use the 30. If I wanted more of a caricature, I'll use it as a 14.
Yeah,
and then if you go further down, that one I remember really well. So just below that fingernails, 1 row below on your right, black and white.
Yeah, the guy drinking water. Yeah.
That's 300mm. There was no way I could get close to it, and he would still be showering. Yeah. Have you been to India?
I haven't. No, not yet.
Okay. So you point a camera at anyone in India, and they immediately pose.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew I'd come closer, you would stop showering.
Yeah.
Not that you look for me taking the photograph, but from the distance, yeah. And I did wait for him to see me. So I was holding the camera. He didn't notice me with the camera, but I knew at one point he'll move. And the minute he moves and looks at me, that's when I hit the shutter.
And he immediately went to posing, or?
No, I just immediately dropped the camera. I was at a distance from him.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I knew I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
I literally knew I got it. So, as I was saying, the story is the thing. I want people to look at it and get an idea. The other thing is context. And that, by the way, is something that I noticed in a lot of my older photographs. That was something that was very noticeable to me. Well, a lot of my older photographs I was taken in portrait orientation. Yeah, you don't necessarily see that, but when I look at all my photographs, I take a lot of portrait orientation. While now, I'd say 85% of my photography is landscape.
It's funny that you mentioned that, yeah, because now that you mentioned it, I noticed it. But it's also funny because I was going to ask earlier how, because you mentioned you don't post your crowd photos on Instagram because it doesn't work, how Instagram influenced your work. But it's funny because it's usually the other way around. Like people used to photograph more horizontally and now more vertically because of the Instagram algorithm and using up more screen space. So it's funny how you did the reverse actually. And is it something, did you do that? Was it intentional, or did you just notice it retroactively? Like you saw your work.
I noticed it retroactively. Yeah. I know why I do it. It has nothing to do with Instagram. In the landscape orientation, I can get the context. So I'm not a portrait photographer. So even though you'll see many, there are photographs where there's just one person, but even when I take a portrait or someone very, very close, I want something to happen, something that will put the person in context. So you get an idea. So I'll give you an example. The one in the middle.
The lady with the phone booth.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so it's very easy for me in this case to focus only on the subject. Only on the subject, go portrait orientation. And I get a photo and it can be interesting, but that's not what I look for. I look for context. So I wanted a wider view of what's going on there in this picture. And that's what I like about it, because she's posing and you get the people around just walking around and curious about what's going on. Yeah. So it's not, if you get it just with a phone booth, it can look a bit glamorous, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted the whole scene.
Yeah, while you mentioned it, I was thinking like the vertical, just like you use the phone booth as the edges more or less. You have her red's in a red dress on a red phone booth. It's like a very Instagram, as you said, glamorous shot, which would probably work. But this one for me is like, that's the Instagram shot, and this is more like the gallery or the photo book shot. It's like, as you said, it's like you have the context. It kind of makes it odd as well, because why is she there in that outfit against that phone booth while people are just walking around? Like I do notice like a guy with I think it's like a pride flag, I call it sweatband, I think it is. So that kind of gives away some of the context perhaps, but apart from that, it's an odd photo, which I like,
And if you go up, say 1, 2, 3, up, it's a photo I took in India.
With the guy with the hard hat,
Yes. So again, I could have focused only on him. I wanted the guys in the background. So if I remove it, it's a different photograph, which leads me to the next point. What are we as photographers? Yeah. So many times people look at photographs as documenting. It's not documenting. We're editors. We're all editors. We don't really document. Yeah. We see something, and if we both go out and shoot together, and we shoot exactly the same things, our photographs would look very different.
Yeah.
Why? Because I will edit it in one way and you will edit it in another way. And I'm not talking about post-processing. I'm talking about what you decide to put in the screen.
Yeah, lens choice, focus points. Exactly.
So we edit things. And so I find it always quite amusing that people say, oh, this is a documentary. No, it's not a documentary. It's an edit of what's been happening in the way Victor, sees the scenes in front of me, and what do I want to pass on to the viewer.
Yeah, that's true. Like I struggle with that as well. Like I can't call myself like documenting my city. Like in a way, there's like, of course, historians might probably use some of the photos to prove some points or whatever in like 100 years from now. But at the same time, it's like, I just find this aesthetically pleasing. I like how it looks. I like what it tells about me or about the subject, whatever. But I find it sometimes hard to see it purely as documenting, indeed, like as you mentioned. Also, that's kind of like the podcast has named Slices of Time, mainly because you need to give a podcast a name. It's called Slice of Time Street Photography Podcast because it's a street photography podcast. But the Slice of Time also came about because I see like we have this timeline which we're on, and a photo is just like a small sliver of that timeline. It's just like a small cutout, but perhaps like, for example, with the hard hat, the guy with the hard hat in India, like it looks like a fun interaction. It's really up close. It's very, very friendly and amicable. I can assume you had like a fun talk with him or like interaction, whatever. But it could very well be that he's like looking up to, I don't know, like a crane falling down or something. It's like you don't know it. So that's what I find fun. It's just like this slice of time, and a second later, maybe everything went.
The moment.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. One of the things that really stuck in my head. Have you heard of the Independent newspaper in the UK?
I think, I know the name, but I've never read it, or I don't know.
So the Independent started its way. It's now online only. It started its way in the 80s, Yeah, as an independent paper, because the UK, the papers are always associated with this or that, or so.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they put at the top of the agenda is their photography. They were black and white, while everybody was moving to color. They also eventually moved to color, and the photography was exquisite. I could just buy the paper and just look at photographs.
Yeah. Okay.
But I remember their ad, for how they presented themselves in an ad as independent, and I'll never forget that. They showed in the ad 3 images. First image, you see a guy running, and that's it. You just see the guy running. The second image, you zoom out, you see he's running towards an old lady with his hand, the way you saw it before, reaching towards her. And what does she have in her hand? A handbag. So first impression, someone running, don't know what from. Second impression you get, he's trying to steal her bag. And then the third image, you zoom out even further, and you see that they're trying to pull a piano onto one of the houses through the window.
Okay.
Snaps. And then the last impression, no, he's trying to save her.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And this is 3 images I'll never forget, because it made me think about, hold on, every photograph I see way before digital manipulation, etc., you could manipulate anything you wanted by choosing what to put in the frame or how to crop your image.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I for me that realization came. I had to do an event for like a commission event, and they were expecting like I don't know, like 50 people, but in the end, only like 12 people showed up or something. But it was my job to make it look like 50 people were there, and it's like you take a telephoto lens, you do some over-the-shoulder shots of people, and like you can manipulate it in that way that it looked like a very successful event. And for me, like, I mean, that was my job, and it was kind of easy to do. But at the same time, it was like, for me, like you used to read, like people would see photography as the truth instead of like paintings were like, you know, it's like an artist's rendition, and photography, that will be the truth, like at the start of photography. And to me, it's like, it's never been the case, because as you said, like you don't see the wider picture. It could be like a moment and everything could change. So that's something I find very interesting. And it's also why I like street photography and looking at other people's work, because it's kind of like, what moments do they pick? And in a way, that's their artistic expression and artistic choice. It's like, there's no right or wrong in choosing specific moments, but it's like, you choose different moments than I do. You choose different subjects than I do. And as you said, like if we go out together to the same place, we'll end up with different photos. And that's what I love about photography. But at the same time, yeah, you can't really sell it as a truth. And if I see newspaper photos, I'm always careful. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that bottom line is we are editors.
Yeah. That's a nice way to see it. I think that's cool. And like talking about like editing, but more like I'm gonna use a dirty word and make it content editing. For example, for your Instagram, you mentioned you don't post your crowd photos. Do you post? Do you really like pick your photos to work for Instagram, or is it more like, this is something I want to show, or how do you go about that part? Like, how
I do
important is it?
when I put something on Instagram. I'm a photographer, and I do like the feedback, not necessarily likes or anything of that type, but I like people looking at my photographs, etc. And specifically when people DM me on a specific photograph and ask me questions. So it's the feedback. That's why you present your photographs. Now, the medium is extremely important of how you're going to, what you're going to pick and what you're going to show. So I don't want the message to be lost. So if the medium doesn't suit the type of photograph, I will not pick it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So if, for instance, I was part of an exhibition in Milan, and the screen was enormous. I've never seen my photographs in that size, but it was digital. So every photo, so the size was great, but the switching of the photos wasn't, in a way, because we don't really have time. We're seeing it in more and more exhibitions. I've been to the Sony exhibition. They've got too many screens, in my view. You just sit down, you watch it. Oh, I like it. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
Let's wait for the next rotation.
It's like a slideshow, but yeah, okay, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so you get it in, you can get much more in much bigger size because printing is expensive. While once you've got the screen,
Yeah,
you can put anything on it, but it switches and you don't have the chance to see the things. So the medium is important. So if you're asking me if my photographs are in an exhibition and are on a digital screen that switches, I will choose certain types of photographs.
Yeah, okay.
If it's a big print, I will choose a different photograph. It's got to fit the medium.
Yeah.
To shine the photographs on. So to say that I'm completely agnostic to how it's, no, that is incorrect, and I don't think this is right. The work of a photographer starts from the snap all the way to how it's presented. And all that is important.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But that's why I asked, because for me, it's more like I like this photo and I'll post it on Instagram. I'm getting back on it now because I notice that I'm going to post less because I don't want to post to like photos that I like, but I know that won't work on Instagram. But it's like a difficult question because there's photos that I had a discussion with Stefano as well. There's like photos that work great on a wall, like you can print them, put them in a gallery, and it's perfect. But on Instagram, they wouldn't work. Or also, we mentioned he made a book about London during the COVID period. I also saw that you made a zine. I'm going to get to it as well. But it's like you have photos that are on their own, they're not really interesting. It's like it's a nice close-up photo, but you can't post them solo on Instagram, for example, or put them solo on a wall. But in the context, like if you make like a series of 3 photos, all of a sudden they're like they have their part. So that's something I'm personally struggling with a bit, like looking for those series as well. But maybe to go back to the zine that I mentioned, like that's another selection that on Instagram, I assume, or why did you get to it?
So okay, I was telling you earlier that I was part of an exhibition in Milan, organized by the Street Sweep Gallery. I can see them on Instagram as well. And the gentleman that arranges everything, we had a chat, and he said he would like to publish a zine for me. So that's how it all started. Nothing to do with in a way, this way to Instagram, because he found me on Instagram the way you did. And that's what led to the zine. And then the question was, okay, what do I put on the zine? I can tell you that it's a bloody nightmare. Curating your images and trying to find something, specifically since he wanted to define it as the globe-trotting photographer. Which I said, okay, I'll play along with that. Then in that case, I need to show photographs from different places in the world, but they don't necessarily connect into a story. Yeah. So what do I do? I don't know. Hopefully it worked well. I still haven't received them. He has to post them over to me. So what I've seen is what he sent me on the video, which I posted, but I haven't touched it yet.
Okay,
I've got photographs on other books, but not the zine yet. So hopefully it will arrive this week. If not, I will see it much later because I'm going to travel. So that's the idea behind the zine. And what I chose at first, I thought black and white and color, or black and white. In the end, I said, okay, let's just do it black and white, color, because I don't know if the story works with different monochrome and color. So I'm not really sure that is correct at the moment, but anyway, I chose colors. And then I sort of thought of, okay, I've got all those events that I've been to, and I take contextual photographs, but I also take photos of single people. So the idea there was to have some sort of geographical context together with the concept of from the many to the few. So trying to arrange it where I've got groups, and I fizzle down all the way to the single people that I have in there, where hopefully the photos make sense. On the series that I've posted on Instagram, which is an interesting point, because when you choose a single photo, you choose a photo to put there that you really like, and you think that people are going to appreciate it. When you choose a series, you do have a few interesting photos there, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But not all the photos are because you want the storyline.
Yeah.
So depending what you're trying to do. So when I was doing the Ivrea Carnival, I was very curious, how do I do it? Because do I post my best photo in the series as the first photo, or do I put it in the correct order because I've got a story, because I tell the whole background of the carnival?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
In there. But while I'm doing my old photos of China today, I don't have a problem. I choose a certain place or space, and then I go, the order is irrelevant. And the truth is, I don't even remember the order.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
I remember the areas. I remember more or less where I was, but I don't. I will post some from Pakistan soon, which I do remember because it was, when you'll see the photographs when I finally post them, it's something that is seared in me. It wasn't like, there's a lot of guns and shooting and
yeah, in the 80s, I can imagine. Yeah,
and so I remember there quite well where everything was taken. So that's the zine. I don't write about specific photographs, but the way I catalog everything is one by the year. So I start with the year first, and then I've got subcategories, which will be, say, for instance, Ivrea Carnival, and then there'll be the photos from the Ivrea Carnival, and I've got them according to order after I've deleted everything that I don't like. If it will be London, for instance, where there's a lot of photographs, so I will have 2024, London Q1, and under London Q1, I'll have subcategories, say, for instance, if you saw, there's the clown service in London. Once a year, there's a clown service in London in memory of the most mythological clown in history, and it's quite an event. So I've got that as a subcategory in Q1. Yeah, and so I will have events that I go to, like the Hat Walk. So it will be in Q1, and then I'll have odd lots, which don't really. So I'll have an odd lots, and then Q2, Q3, Q4, etc. Facebook and Instagram help me quite a bit also, because when I do post, I do write something about it.
Yeah.
So it gives me also something to fall back on. Hopefully, you will never disappear, but I don't know about that. And so that's how everything is more or less categorized, but I do not sit down and write for myself about the specific photos.
Okay, cool. Yeah, also because, like, of course, you as we mentioned earlier, you get in contact with the people on the photos fairly often, and it's like you mention them, so it's kind of like, how do you remember who's who? Or
that's very tough. That's a good question. So if I go out and take 2 photos or 3 photos and I speak to someone, or 5 photos, I only spoke, or 20, it doesn't make any difference for that matter. Let's say I spoke only to one person.
Then it's easy, of course.
That's easy. Yeah, what happens when about 30, 40, 50 people want and it's like, and I want to oblige. I won't always oblige. Sometimes the photos are shit and I'm not going to share it with anyone. I'm just going to delete it. Yeah. So over time, I tell them, guys, this is my Instagram. Yeah. Send me a message and make sure to tell me exactly who and what. And so many times, and even when I forget, after they also try and remind me, I tell them I need more information when I chat to them on DM. And maybe you've got a photo of yourselves from that event. Sometimes, if it is something that is really exceptional and I really want to share it, I will take a photo as well on my iPhone. Yeah, which is very close, very similar to what I took on my camera, and that will help me because I'll send it to myself on email and I'll write what it was. But generally, I'm asking people to now just DM me, and I will try and revert back. And people can be quite persistent, like, well, what's going on? Are you sending me the photos? Are you sending me the photos?
I can imagine,
I will get there and I'll send you photos. And so many times I also send photos. They're not bad photos, but they're just boring photos.
Yeah,
but I will process them and send them.
They'll be happy with it, but you're not really
I'm not
happy with it. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because for me, that's kind of like an issue to like, that's something I'm thinking about. Like, I have my business cards, of course, but at the same time, that's like, if someone emails me telling me, we've met on, for example, a Pride parade. Yeah, that's fine, but I've photographed 30 people, like exactly as you said. Like, so that's cool to hear that it's like a more common problem than.
It's a very common problem when you share so many people.
Yeah. So like, how does it happen that you have like 30 people on a day?
Sorry, that ask for my photo?
That you photograph like 30 people or.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's mainly during
I like talking to people. One of the things about using the camera, and we live in an era where we don't talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If we would bump into each other on the street, we wouldn't talk to each other. We'd just pass next to each other. Yeah. And probably so many times we would love to talk to people.
Yeah, but
we don't. Yeah. Now, when I hold the camera, it makes people at ease to talk with me, and for me at ease to talk with them, because we've got something in common. I'm taking a photograph of you, so you're asking, why are you taking a photograph of me? I said, because you look very interesting, or I like the background, or whatever. And we get into a chat. Oh, and what's your Instagram? And they get into the Instagram. Oh, I love the photograph. Sometimes you just happen to come across people who really like looking at photographs and things. And so when I'm with the camera, I will talk to strangers. When I'm without the camera, I'm not going to go and approach people.
Yeah, you have no reason to, yeah.
So that's part of the fun. It really is part of the fun. We live in a world where we don't talk to people. And you realize once you start that people want to talk to you.
Mm.
They really do want to talk to you.
Yeah. It's like two things I want to say about that is like the first reason is that's why I kind of started this podcast as well, because we street photographers often, like, for you, it's obviously a very social exercise you do if you go out in street photography, but for a lot of street photographers it's kind of like a solo experience. Like, rarely you even do it with like a photography friend. It's usually you go out alone and you take your photos, and sometimes of course you interact with the people. So that's the first one. But the second one is, it's funny because the previous guest, Simon Ogden from Manchester, mentioned that as well. So he doesn't really go out specifically to talk to the people he photographs, but he mentioned like if he likes to use a viewfinder and make it clear to people that he's photographing them, in the hope that it sparks a conversation. Because like me, he's kind of like a more, like, he's an introverted extrovert. So we like talking to people, but we're not going to look for it. But for him, that's a way to engage that conversation, which is funny. And for you as well, apparently, it's a very, like,
yeah,
it's almost like you don't really do photography for the photos, but you do it for the talks to people. That's kind of obviously like
I wouldn't say
very
that.
black and white of me to say, but it's kind of, yeah.
I like the conversations with people. Now, you asked if I take, before we entered into the recording, if I take photographs with other people. So for most of my life, I could not even imagine having another photographer next to me.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
I just could not imagine. I want to be on my own. Yeah, I want to find my own subjects, etc. Do I also go out and take like pure candid, where I do not want to talk to people? Yeah, I'm just going to sit down and just wait for something to happen, or walk around and take a photo and carry on and not talk to people. I do that as well. I can have a day or two where I just walk around and just take photos without talking to people. So it will be a different type of photography that I will do. So I do that as well. The Instagram, the joining of groups, so that changed a lot. I don't know if you know this Big Badass group, or maybe you're even
I haven't heard of it. No.
Okay, you should check it out. The Street Badass group, I think, is a stunning group, phenomenal. Yeah, great photographers out there. But what's so good about what they've done is they bridged the gap between the physical and the virtual world. So we've got, I know a lot of photographers from there. We've got meetings. We're going to have one in Rome very soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And the photographers meet together and get to know each other. And you know, suddenly the person is not just an Instagram handle. Yeah, he's got a name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's yeah.
And you chat and you see them in so many different places, and you learn from them. So I worked and suddenly I started taking photographs with other people. And I was like, I don't know how to do it, but I went over and did. And I found it very interesting. For one, I saw my results compared to theirs.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
what did I do right? What did they do wrong or do right? And I didn't do right, etc. How did they approach the photographs?
So yeah, that's cool, and it's fun that there is more and more of a community, I think, in street photography these days.
Yeah, and the social medias managed to bring a lot of people together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's good and bad in it, yeah, but it's mainly good.
I think it's predominantly good. Now, there's people I know in so many different countries and so many different places, and you know, I know I'm going to go, if I go over to New York, then there's a few people there that I'd love to meet, and I've seen their work. If I go to California, the same thing will happen there. I go to Asia, there's people I tend to know and chat with on a regular basis. And I still like going and taking my own photos on my own. So even if I'm in a big event and there's a lot of photographers I know, I just veer on my own. By the way, there's just going back to what I was telling you about the way I approach a photograph being the story, the most important thing. The one thing that popped up in conversations I had with a lot of people is the ISO.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have to, as a street photographer, I find that for a street photographer to be obsessed with ISO I find it very, very strange.
In this day and age, I don't really get the idea why people are stressed about ISO. Like, most cameras can handle it perfectly well, anywhere between 100 and, let's say, 6,400 even. And
okay, I will go further than that. Remember, I said, for me, it's a story. Number one is the story. Yeah. So the photographs we were looking at from the Euros, that I was taking, I couldn't use flash because I would disturb them.
Yeah.
They're watching and they'll get very annoyed. They've come over to watch England play Spain, and maybe England's going to finally make it or whatever. I'm going to start flash. No, it's not enough light. I was using 54,000.
Wow, that's intense. Yeah,
that's the most. Why? Because
which camera was it?
Nikon.
Yeah, the Z1
Nikon
or
Z6 II.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Now, the pictures come out blurry and noisy like hell, they do. But let me say this: one, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have the photo to begin with at all.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't have a grainy photo. I just don't have a photo. 2, you can use on the Photoshop suite now, you can denoise. And if you look at the photographs, again,
they're great. Yeah, it's
you
I
just
love that tool.
denoise it. Yeah, as I said, I want the story, and then I will try and fix it. And if I can't, I will bin it. But it's no different than not taking the photo. At least here I've got a choice.
Exactly. But that's why I'm with you there, because I don't understand why people are like, the last 4 years, let's say, like ISO has become semi-irrelevant. It's kind of like, it's not like with film that you have like a certain grain. I totally understand the choice of ISO back then. And like it used to be up until like 4 years ago or something. Like, of course, if your photos were noisy, you can't really do much with them. But at the same time, it's okay. Like I spoke to a concert photographer. It was 2 years ago, and he mentioned like he does not care if there's noise on his photos. It's like concert photo. It's meant to be noisy. But it's also just like you take the photo, and if it's noisy, that's fine. It's
again, you got to take the photo, and then if you don't like it, throw it away.
I think we took too much ISO advice from fine art landscape photographers, where of course it's annoying if your photo is noisy and you're not sure if it's a starry night or if it's noise. I can assume in that case it's annoying. But for street photographers, I don't really see the problem.
It's not only that. I see photographers, because I also watch some like advice that street on YouTube try and keep the ISO as low as possible for the situation. Okay, how do I keep the ISO as low as possible for the situation? I'm not a landscape photographer. There's an image in front of me. Yeah, I took a photo now. I'm going over to the next street. There's less light. Yeah, what is the right one? Then because you keep it as low as possible, it might be too low, and then what do you get? You get a blurred photograph, which you cannot fix.
No, exactly.
There's no way you can fix.
I'm on auto ISO all the time.
I don't use auto ISO. I don't. I just use a higher ISO. I will use it in certain cases because what did I find out? I use aperture priority.
Yes,
that's my default use of the camera. And when I use the aperture priority, I also use it as shutter priority. It's the same thing, because I play with the aperture, the shutter would change. When I've got auto ISO, there's another thing that changes.
Yeah,
and I don't want it to change. If I want to be able to change the speed when I'm changing the aperture, I don't want to change the ISO when I'm changing the aperture.
No, okay, I can see where you're coming from.
For me, that's why I like it fixed.
Yeah, for me, it's in the auto ISO. You can go into the settings and, for example, give like a minimal shutter speed. So for me, it's like you have some kind of control. But I get where you're coming from. But for me, that's for what I do. It's maybe less relevant or so. So I think like in that case, like there's no right or wrong in the settings. I think, but I think we can agree that ISO is less, less important.
I use automatic ISO when I use manual.
Okay, yeah.
I use manual. I take a series of photographs like I did on that day.
That's actually clever, yeah. Okay.
Where the distance is clear, everything is more or less clear to me. So the settings on my manual are fixed. I know how much depth of field I want. I know what speed I know, because people are moving. So I'll set the aperture and I'd let the ISO do the work.
That's very clever. I've never thought about that, actually. Okay, I can see that. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
That's a great advice, actually. That's fun. It's like I don't try to go too technical with these podcasts because there's a lot of information about aperture and shutter speed and ISO already. Lots of it, I think, is too technical minded, and as we discussed, it's all about keep your ISO low, which I don't necessarily agree with. It's like just get a shot. That's the most important one.
It's all about the story.
Yeah, and like ISO is the least creative of settings now. Like shutter speed gives you some kind of creative control. Aperture gives you some kind of creative control. I so not anymore. But yeah, anyway, that's. I think we can have a discussion about that for another hour.
Yeah.
So I'm going to round up. I was just going to have like one final question before we wrap up. You mentioned you travel a lot. Do you find yourself acting differently on the streets, for example, in London than in India? Like in interacting with people, like do you approach it slightly differently because of cultural differences, or?
The answer to that is yes. India is not a good example.
Okay.
India is take a photo of me wherever you go. Yeah, they want, and they like having their photographs in most cases.
Yeah.
So, and majority of them speak English. What happens when you go to? I went to Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they don't really like having their photos taken.
Yeah.
So I don't really have the types of photos I took when I take usually. They're different. They're taken from a bigger distance, not always.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I manage to get into a conversation with a person. So the conversation has to be very long and everything. It's like, and then, can I take a photo of you? And after he feels, yes, I can take a photo of you, etc. But generally speaking, it is tough.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I could have, but the cultural thing is that I wasn't aware of is if I did that, what would be the reaction? If I went over and took a photograph of people's faces and tried to talk to them like I talk in London, will it turn violent?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, like, maybe
Yeah,
not violent, but there's like certain types of respect, perhaps, that some things
exactly.
are less appreciated in some places. Yeah.
So there's certain things that so Morocco is a perfect example. I'm not really clear. I'm not really sure because even here in the UK, I am trying to be alert to a situation where there is a photograph that people would not want to take, not want to have taken. The Nottingham Carnival is coming soon. Have you ever been?
No.
Okay, so it's the biggest street carnival in Europe, one of the largest in the world. Yeah, you've got about 3 million people who descend on Notting Hill. So,
whoa, okay.
From the carnival itself, so their processions, which are stunning. Yeah, you've got street parties everywhere. Now, if you breathe, you're stoned.
Okay.
So there's no way of avoiding it.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not just that. It's any type of substance is out there. And there's street parties and food and everything. And you really need to know your way around because you do not want to get caught in the very, very dense parts of the crowds because you could literally be crushed. Now there, you need to be alert of who you're taking photographs of. So in Pride, 99% of the time, we're okay. Not ill, you got to be careful. Yeah. And you got to be very alert that you may take a picture of someone who is not only doesn't appreciate it, can be violent as well, given the substances that are running.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Is vain and on top of the alcohol everywhere, etc. So you need to be more aware of what's happening.
Because it's like there's no, like on an event, like for example, Pride, it was like 2 weeks ago, I think here in Antwerp, there was a Pride as well. I've never been to a Pride before, so I wanted to go, and I also wanted to go make photos. And everyone was kind of, or at least the people in the parade especially, were very happy to be photographed. Some even really like posed, so it was nice. But I can imagine, like on some events, it's harder, or in some different parts of the country, or even of Europe or the world. So that's and it's. I think it's a hard one if you travel, like there's no real research around it, I think, or like you can't really prepare too much about it. It's a lot of feeling, like what at the place itself, like feel what can I get away with it and what's clearly not appreciated.
It's so I went over to Sassoon Docks in Mumbai in India, This is their big fish market. Opens, gets really busy 5 a.m. in the morning, 5:30 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, you can see a few pictures there as well. They carry fish their size on their backs, and it's exceptionally busy. It's like people running in every direction. You try and stand in one place and you'll be knocked over.
Yeah, okay.
And unlike most parts of India, they don't have the time to post for you. They're just too busy. Everything has to be done, finished within, wrapped up. The place closes up at about 7 a.m. So there I did get some backlash from people that I took photographs. In other cases, they just didn't mind, and I could take photographs of things as they happen and they're going along. And literally, you can see I'm very, very close to them. Yeah, they're coming towards me with a big fish and everything. I'm taking photographs, etc. But I try and not,
that'd be
give it away as much as possible, which is very difficult. And you've got a very small window, so I ended up going there twice to take my photo. First time I learned, first time I learned who and what, and second time I went over, I got better pictures.
I think we should wrap it up because we've already been talking for a long time.
Yeah.
So perhaps as a final one, where can people find you? Where can they interact with you?
So the best place for me is Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the handle is at Victor Shohet, no dots, nothing, just in one word. Can always DM me, comments, etc. I'm more than happy to engage with anyone, to collaborate with anyone. It's all great. And hopefully soon enough, I will set up my own web page as well. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, everything will also be mentioned in the description of the podcast and on the show notes on my website. So people, if they don't know how to write your name, even though it's in the title of the podcast, probably they'll find a link there to follow you. So thank you for your time, Victor.
Thank you so much, Fred. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this conversation with Victor. Don't forget to subscribe to be updated about upcoming episodes. Reach out via social media if you have any questions or ideas you want to share.